Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Optimal Bio's Wellness Podcast. Today we have a special treat. Dr. Stephanie Rimka, the founder and owner of Brain & Body Solutions, is going to be our special guest today, along with Tylar, Brannon. And we hope this next hour is a learning experience and an adventure, for all of us that are listening today. To that end, I thought I'd just immediately flip it over to Dr. Rimka and allow her to tell her story, how she got started, and how, what are some of the, I guess, important things that, transpired that allowed her to start her practice and also be here today. So welcome, doctor.
Thank you. So nice to be here with the two of you. So this is always I think the worst question, the introduce yourself moment. I almost feel like I'm on either a BNI meeting or a Toastmasters speech thing, but you think I would be used to it after doing this hundreds of times, but here we go. I may be a little bit different than some. I've been listening to some of your podcasts. I am of the very strong holistic, or what people may call AKA alternative health scene. So I didn't have my pivotal moment to know that allopathic medicine was not my path happened in my early 20s, right? 19 maybe even. So I'll back it up to what I do today. I've been in private practice for over 20 years. I started off as working in the mental health field, actually, with schizophrenics, and realized really quickly I didn't like what I was seeing. Nobody was getting better, and none of this was working. And it was like, I don't think I need to go to medical school. I think I need to do something else. And kind of fell back upon something that I knew that had been helping me and helped my mental health tremendously, was chiropractic. So I went to chiropractic school because I didn't want to go the drug route. And I went into it with a fierce determination to help people get out of prison, help them get off drugs, and help them get off mental hospitals. I was a very young, naive person thinking I could do that just, with the power of the adjustment and the vitalistic philosophy that chiropractors have. So while in school, my nephew was diagnosed with autism. That was a massive transition of, how can I help my sister and how can I help this child? And so a kind of, case manage that whole thing, but finding the physicians and the specialists in the Defeat Autism Now network. And then they kind of hand trained me for over a decade in everything from mitochondrial repair, DNA, epigenetics, the gut-brain connection, neurotransmitters. It just became the thing. And that all related to my first desire to help people with mental illness, such as schizophrenia was the top notch, but bipolar and suicidal ideation, and things that were leading people to live lives on the street or in prison. So that's kind of the track of how it happened and how I approach school. And because I don't like ever being told what to do, and I'm not a really good leader of things, I just opened practices because I was too stupid to know that was hard or a bad idea. Because the holistic practitioners like chiropractors or Chinese medical practitioners here, acupuncturists, whatever, we can't really get jobs. Like, we don't go to medical school and work in a hospital. So you kind of have to be able to run a business and be successful and get results to get patients. Like, if you aren't good at it, you aren't going to survive. So that's what I've been doing for a very long time. And my practice definitely has taken dives and turns, and wherever I was, you attract those kind of people that need you. Like, if you help fertility, you get a bunch of those. You panic attacks, you help a bunch of those. They just start coming in. Fibromyalgia, now you're known for that, right? But once I started getting into the neurotherapies, I'm board certified in neurofeedback as well, and I've studied a lot of orthomolecular psychiatry. Even though they won't certify me, the organizations, I take their training, but they won't certify someone who's not a physician yet. So I do a lot of things that are very brain-based, lots of technology, focusing on the chemistry, which led me to focus on the quantum biophysics of the human body. As you go deeper and deeper and deeper into the body, that's what you got to do. So that's what happened. I saw, I read, it was really one woman with schizophrenic, and reading her, she was nonverbal, in a wheelchair, and getting to know her and take care of her and getting her into a group home, so she out of the hospitals and getting these schizophrenics into group homes. Her case, reading the book, that was inches thick, the binder of everything about her. And one night I just had a lot of time and I was reading it, and it was disgusting. It was kind of shocking to my soul. And again, her case was not really that unique in terms of the drugging up, doing away with, the abuse then she received in the hospital by, orderlies that work there. And it was disgusting. And I said, there's got to be a better way. I'm like, they don't get anybody better. And in fact, everybody just gets worse from every drug they put them on. And again, in my naivete and what I went through, I thought, they just need to be adjusted. I learned it's a whole lot more than that, a lot more complicated, whether it's schizophrenia or autism or anything else. And I just dove into it. So that's what I've been doing in private practice for a very, very long time. Most of my practice is built upon psychiatrists and therapists referring to me going, she's a little bit crazy. I don't know exactly what she's doing over there, but you just need to go see her. That's what kind of happens. And I work together with the physicians and therapists that, our goal is to get them off the drugs.
A couple questions around that. I mean, from your experience and with the patients that you're seeing, from my perspective, there seems to be an epidemic, of mental health issues at this point in time. Why is that? Why in the last, 20 or 30 years are we seeing this?
So there's nothing is like one cause at this point. It's a very integrated, holistic way of looking at this. I think ultimately, for me, because I've asked myself this a lot, and I'm looking at it a lot, it seems the further humans get disconnected from nature, it's as simple as that, the more biologically disruptive we get. So whether that's in everything about how we're living, how the light, the water, the magnetism, the electromagnetics, the food we're putting in, it has powerful, profound, and long-lasting impacts on everything. And once you start deranging the biological system into chaos, it leads to severe brain derangement and miscommunication everywhere.
Completely. Is you hit it like the nail on the head. It's like the perfect way to sum it up is getting away from nature, because that's what it is. And I feel like, how you said, one adjustment could fix everything. And it's just, if people understood and knew what food can do to you, either negative or positive, I feel like it could help so much, because the processed food, the drinking water, and just the less connection we have with humans and being outside, I think it's just a direct report of what's going on. And especially when you add pharmaceuticals into it, people don't talk about the negative side effects that people could be taking daily. They don't realize it could be, causing depression, anxiety, or other physical problems.
Yeah, it's even in the languaging, a couple things, even called a side effect. It's not a side effect, it's an effect.
Yeah.
It's all effects.
Right.
Some you're going to like and some you're not going to like.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's cause and effect. It's, it just is what it is. And nature is more, what we're doing right now, this is incredibly unnatural, right? So the further you live away from nature, disconnected in these homes, surrounded by 60 hertz electricity, with routers and artificial lights, and with all these clothes on, and what is all this stuff even made of, right? What am I breathing in the paint and the rug fibers? There are things we've just taken for granted, like this is normalized, instead of living connected to the earth, sleeping on the ground, having the light and day cycles. Food is just captured light.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It's a communication signal from a process from the sun and what it's doing with the earth. It's a combination of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and a little bit of nitrogen with amino acids and stuff. So it's really just the same things. You have a circular process that the earth goes through with photosynthesis, and human, respiration. We are intimately connected. And the further humans keep thinking we're so smart with this incredible, cortex, it's really been helpful for us in so many ways. But we are the only animal on earth that needs 47 books, 18 degrees, 4,000 research citations to know what the hell they eat.
Mhm.
It makes no sense. The lions are looking at us like, you're a bunch of idiots. This isn't that hard, right? Why are you so confused? No other animal on earth is confused about what to eat, how to move, how to sleep, how to have sex, how to make babies. You know, we are driven by these primal things of hunger, thirst, reproducing, whatever you want to call it, breathing, sleeping. They're primal. And then the love connection is kind of that weird things in there too. And if you just listen, you always get told what to do. The problem is we're living in such perversion that it's very distorted and we no longer can even hear our own signals, right? So food matters, absolutely. It is absolutely not the only thing, right? It's everything that goes into it. So when I start explaining to people in terms of changing their behavior, it's fascinating because people just want to buy a bunch of pills to take or a bunch of potions and lotions. And I'm like, it's not actually where we need to start. They say something like collagen, right? I just answered a question. What's the best collagen supplement? I'm like, it's called food.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't you just eat? Let's start with that. Let's start with foundation. Let's start with how are you sleeping? Let's start with behaviors before we start you cannot out supplement or even you can't even out eat a bad lifestyle.
Right.
Right. You know what I'm saying? You can't counteract with food, staying up to 4 a.m, sleeping 2 hours a night, working a night shift. There's just some things biologically, we are not ever going to outsmart the laws of nature.
Mm-hmm.
So why doesn't traditional medicine understand this?
Well, I mean, you want me to keep it real for you?
Well, let's assume it's a good way that they don't understand, as opposed to potentially, the corporations controlling the pharmaceuticals and all the other stuff that you hear about all the time. But just from a purely good intention standpoint, if you're a traditional doctor, why aren't there nutrition classes in med school, for example? And why does it in this day and age with all the knowledge, as you said, we have 47 books for everything, from eating to sex to everything else. These doctors aren't that stupid. I mean, there has to be a reason why they don't look at that.
Okay, well, many ways to take it. Let's say, so I cannot talk about the Rockefellers and how they actually are funding medical school education, because that is the reality. It is what they learn. But what we've lost is the ability to observe. If true science and learning is an observation. So there's these great guys, most of them were like these anthropologists and these explorers. They were, explorers, and they went out and lived with the Inuit and the Hadza and the Zombie. They lived in the Maasai, Stephenson and Weston A. Price even. They went and lived with them and they just wrote everything down. They just watched them. They're like, what do they look like? What do they do? What do they eat? How do they sleep? That's all they did. They just observed it. They didn't have a theory. They didn't have a thesis they were trying to prove. It seems like we've lost the ability to just observe and then do reasoning from like, well, that's what happened. Instead, what we like to do is, I think this is the answer. So I'm going to selectively observe my information to find a way to make that be true. Cholesterol theory is that, infectious theory is that, or whatever, versus, well, this is what we're seeing. They sure seem happy, strong, fit, They don't eat any grains. They don't eat any of the white stuff. They eat a ton of all they eat is the local stuff. They go to bed when the sun goes down. They don't have light bulbs. We call them primitive savages, but that's what they do, and they're all fine. Now, so medicine, allopathic, this is only 100, 150 years old. It's very new on the scene. I'm not quite sure exactly they're the alternative medicine. Chinese medicine has been around for over 5,000 years. Ayurvedic medicine, I'm Indian, so that's like my game, right? It's been around a very long time. We have sacred medicinal texts even older than those. And those have been working for a very long time. Shamanistic principles have been around for a very long time. And also in none of those contexts and none of those systems is food ignored. They all address it. And none of those systems think, this is just food for thought. None of them have an infectious agent causing illness. It's all poison, detoxification to them, or nutrient deficiency. All of the systems kind of do it the same way. They may have different approaches and how they're talking about it. And all of those systems understand electricity. All of those systems talk electromagnetism. They call it chi or prana or something else. The chakra system, spinning light, they all talk about light. They all talk about magnetism. They're all talking physics, biophysics. Western medicine doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We seem to not want to do hard things like math and physics. And it's turned into, unfortunately, medical schools like a system to break human beings, like the military, overwhelm them, make them memorize so much data that, and here's a flow chart of how it does. And now they have, I mean, if you went to medical school 30 years ago, you had a fraction of drugs to remember compared to today. Like my friends who are practicing, like it's just insane. And the schedule, how is somebody supposed to critically think their way, question their professor or question the information with that schedule? It's not really designed for that. And their residency is horrific, right? It's like famous on every TV show of how no one's sleeping, everyone's exhausted, it's insane, they're sleeping, at the hospital. It's not really set up to observe, study, inquire, and then insurance companies are running them. I've never taken insurance in over 20 years. I've never taken insurance. I won't do it because they won't tell me what to do. Well, my friends who are doing it, they're like, I got 7 minutes per patient. I'm allowed 7 minutes. I go, I spend 3 hours each visit. Tell me who's going to teach more and change more, 7 minutes or 3 hours. Mm-hmm. You see, so I think they're screwed. I think the model is horrific. And if you're, something like only 7%, it might be 12, somewhere in that number of physicians are in private practice. I mean, because they're contained by these hospital systems that are telling them what to do. And they got a time clock. They got quota to meet. And the reality is if you've got to see that many patients per hour, well, you can write a script in 30 seconds. I mean, and people are happy to take the script because they've been conditioned and they want it and they come in asking for it. So I think overwhelm, paying for student loans, I think exhaustion, and it leads to kind of how it ends up in practice. And as far as this medical school is not teaching nutrition, I mean, you'd have to get into some of the history of where the nutrition guidelines came from in the first place and what motivated them and what was the politics behind that and how it was really a religious Seventh-day Adventist that actually created the guidelines. So there's a lot there that the system is, I think, and it's great to me because it's starting to become glaringly broken to people who never realized it was. And they're going to demand change. And there's plenty of good doctors out there that want the change, and it's going to happen, but it has to happen, like I said, right at the research and school level. It has to.
So how did you get the traditional mental health doctor to refer patients to you? Are they at the point where they realize their methodologies aren't working and they recognize the value in you, or do you work in conjunction with them to help the patient?
Almost all of them came to see me as a patient first. So yeah, they know the system's not working. They'll bring their kids to me. There's no way I'm putting my kid on ADHD meds. There's no way I'm doing this. So they're obviously already ones that are in private practice. They're kind of out of the system. They're either concierge physicians or they have cash fee-for-service practices. They may not be full-blown doing it themselves, but you don't have to. Like I know the importance of hormone replacement therapy. I'm not doing it. I refer to the people who know how to do it. I know enough to catch it, to say, oh, you don't have this. You're not depressed, honey. It's Hashimoto's, it's not that. They told you had what? I'm like, oh my God, it's a thyroid problem, or it's we just have a progesterone problem now. Cause you don't need Klonopin or Ativan, let's get what you need. So I have to know that enough, right? So they know enough. So usually they come to see me, and what the hook usually is neurofeedback. Neurofeedback, recording brainwave activity and using operant conditioning in a training program. Psychiatrists and physicians and other peak performers are very drawn to it. And they understand it. And so a lot of psychologists might come to me, they see the results after 2-3 months, are like, that's it, I'm sending everybody to you. And once they start doing that, what happens is they still need to see that DBT therapist or whatever. They still have to do that. But typically the feedback is I can do, and when they're seeing you and me at the same time, in 3 months of neurofeedback, along with what they're doing, they get 2 to 3 years worth of work done. And the people are managed because I bring the emotional stability, structurally and functionally to the brain, so it can finally receive the therapies and stuff that they're doing, whether it's CBT, ERP, DBT, whatever, Imago. So I have a strong network that I work with, and then I'm down to only one psychiatrist that I think is decent that once understands we do need to titrate as I'm changing the brain, just like diabetes, right? If you're on insulin or something, or even metformin, and you start losing weight and you get healthier, your need for that medication goes away. Well, same in the brain, whether it's Adderall or Prozac or something like that. My goal used to be like with a schizophrenic would be like they're on 7 meds. And I thought my goal was 0. And then I got to the point where I knew then 2, and they were back to life. They were at college, working a job, like you wouldn't even know, right? That's winning. Then I'd be like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to think I suck and didn't work. I'm like, you know what? Lithium and what, like, I like lithium a lot for those guys. You know what I mean? There's certain times I'm like, yeah, that one's a good one, So then we learned to be like, there we are. Cause the goal is a stable, high quality life with the least amount of side effects, dangerous effects and risks to that person. And they can contribute to society and their family doesn't have to worry about them. So I don't know, there's my long answer.
So in each patient that comes to you, you obviously do an evaluation, and then are you determining a nutritional plan for them as well? And if so, what are some of the foods, both of you can answer this question, that are great for specific ailments one may be suffering as it relates to the brain?
Yeah, I have to, and that's a sticking point for people with me. It becomes like, that's how we screen real quick, because there's all kinds of Groupons for a brain map or something like that now. It's real trendy, right? And mine, was like 4 times the rate of anybody else's in the city. And it's kind of like, let's be real clear. My office manager didn't know to say, she is going to look at everything and going to ask you to change possibly everything. If you are not willing to do it, do not waste anybody's time. So I like a high success rate. I guarantee I'm interviewing them. If you are not going to get with the program, you can move on. If you just want that, go next door. I have no time or patience for it. I've been doing this too long. I'm not going to waste my time. I don't care to not feel like my life means something. So I want knock out the park. I want it to work. So same way, if you have, I do a lot of fasting. I run fasting programs. Well, if I have somebody comes to me, they're anorexic, well, you can't join my fasting program because you're not allowed to do that, right? So the same way, so I'm like, if their brain isn't ready for neurofeedback or whatever, I'm like, first thing I'd be like, we got to build you up. So yes, food is critical. Inflammation is a massive issue. A brain on fire is a real thing. You can see the pictures. I'm like, do you see the red? Do you see how it's on fire? Your anxiety is all high beta, brain on fire. You cannot have alcohol, sugar, grains, whatever, right? So my entry point in my office is typically, there is nobody allowed to do anything under like a paleo entry point. Like there's no standard American diet, there'll be no gluten, there'll be no, so that's kind of like the entry point. However, and I'm Walls Protocol certified and a GAPS diet. So because I use these different tools, because I already have so many people coming to me that are vaccine injured, autism, let's say, and so many people that they're already down with the holistic thing. They've been doing this a while. They're usually much further than paleo. You might have AIP people, or they've been on Walls, or they're just looking for the next level. So I have to just see, are we at kindergarten? Are we in 6th grade? Are we in high school? Are we going for our PhD? And I move them along slowly there. But in general, you're an animal. That brain is animal fat and cholesterol, saturated fat and cholesterol. I'm going to load you up on the primary structures of what it is to be human. And what it is to be human is animal protein, animal fat, and a bunch of minerals. And you don't need carbs. Okay. So I'm going to address that really, really deeply and try my best to get people ketogenic, a natural primal ketogenic diet. I like fats, bone marrow. This is, if I could get people to eat brains, I would. You got a brain problem, you eat a brain. You got a liver problem, you eat a liver. You got a heart problem, you eat heart. Now, I can't quite get that to go on yet. So I go with what would be considered natural ketogenic fats, lots of cholesterol, eggs, bone marrow, uh, bone broth, fatty meats, a lot of salmon roe is a big one. That's a huge one. So for the phospholipid form of the omega-3 DHA, EPA, I need lots of omega-3, and a lot of people don't like fish, and fish concerns me with some of the toxicity, so I don't want them having too much. Sardines, oysters, so these are some foundational foods that are just required. I started about 3 years ago. I don't know exactly, maybe 4. I no longer will accept vegans. I was vegan for 12 years myself, but it became trying to do neurofeedback on that brain. It just doesn't work. I don't have enough substrate. There's not enough cholesterol. There's not enough omega-3. I can't do it. None of those supplements, plant-based, they don't work. They don't convert. I've done it too long. Again, I was a vegetarian 14 years practicing, vegan 12. It doesn't work. And I finally just kept seeing it and feeling bad. I'm taking their money and it's not working. So if you're willing to change so I can fix it, then that's what we do. So yeah, I focus on a lot of saturated fat, cholesterol, the proper human diet, as Ken Berry says.
So we have an employee in the office and he was vegan for a year. He like wanted to try it. He thought that was health. And then last Friday, he was like, I'm going to try carnivore. So total, 180. And he's been carnivore since Friday. And already since Friday, he's like, my energy and my brain clarity is completely different. And I'm like, well, I'm glad he wants to go to med school. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you started this now before you start cutting people open with that clear mind. But
it's
truly
extraordinary. Mm-hmm.
But it truly is incredible. How your brain and your body needs that fat, needs that protein, and you can't get it elsewhere to get that full benefit.
It is how we developed. It is what made us human. The reality of, we've known this, the anthropological study, they've really gone back and figured it out. It's like, it's done. You can look at the deuterium levels, which is an isotope of hydrogen. They've measured them in the bones of humans going back to 4.5 million years old. And we see the whole story of what was going on. The reality is what makes the most sense and what they figured out, because they have found the bones. They have found all of these things in the caves. Humans figured out some ancestor, some primate ancestor of what this Homo sapiens sapien is. We can really compete with all the animals out there doing their thing. It was a little bit hard for us, but we came across some bones. Somebody, I don't know who that first pre-human was, that figured out how to crack into bones using stones. They found the stone tools. We have the actual, what are the first tools that were used to crack open bones? There is so much food and marrow. You crack open the skull of a woolly mammoth, that's tons of food for your family and your tribe. 20% bone marrow, tons of fat and nutrition. And they figured out how to even slice up those bones eventually. And they used leather, the animal skin, and would carry. And they knew how to take it with them in a backpack to travel, to have the bones and the marrow. And they were eating that all the time. That is straight ketogenic stuff. When all that fat was flooding this brain, it eventually started changing what the mitochondria were doing and the whole way our system was, and neurotransmitters were born. Right. That created memory, that created learning. Now we can learn to track things. Other primates don't do what we do. They can't do those things. And it got bigger and better and better. And we could safely do it by scavenging the part of the animals that had the marrow and the brains that nobody else could get to. That's the key of what happened to us. And it is what made us human and made the brain bigger and better than anybody else on earth. That gets in our way sometimes because we overthink things, but we come up with cool stuff too.
And it makes perfect sense of how cholesterol plays right into neurotransmitter, your communication, your thinking, and the lower cholesterol you have, that's where dementia comes in and other brain. And it's very interesting because so many medicines like statins are now being tied directly to dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's like, well, yes, if you're decreasing the cholesterol, which is, the lead to all of this, to how your brain works, to how your body and your neurotransmitters are functioning, it goes hand in hand. And it's interesting because I feel like one, we don't really know, cholesterol. You see a box of Cheerios and it's like low cholesterol.
Yeah.
It's like, one, you shouldn't be eating a box of Cheerios. So that should be a little, standalone of like, that doesn't make sense. But two, if it's on every cell in our body, then why are we trying to decrease it so much?
Yeah, that's part of the lies that get told, right?
Yeah.
This is, I think, to Jim's question about why can't medicine seem to get it right? I don't really know, but they seem to look at the healing, the cure as the bad thing.
Right.
The cholesterol is there to heal, cure, and repair things, yet they demonized it. A fever is a powerful, potent healing mechanism. It gets rid of everything. It stops cancer in its tracks.
Right.
Yet they want to stop and suppress that. Pus, infection, they're there to clean and purge out the problem. It's the actual cure. But allopathic medicine looks at every symptom as if it's a problem. I'm like, no, but that's the body's just curing itself.
And every symptom so individually too.
Yeah. But cholesterol is, I will say, I learned about the main cholesterol thing was on me, right? So I was a vegetarian. I had extremely low cholesterol, but I didn't know. And it was a geneticist, a great functional doctor that I finally was seeing here. And I was so depressed. I was so fat and depressed with being a vegetarian. And it turns out my thyroid crashed, right? Because I don't know, you're just flooding yourself with gluten and soy for the most part, right? You know what I mean? You're like, you didn't know any better. They're like, you have atypical celiac. I'm like, what? What was that, right?
Yeah.
All that tofurkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like doing the best. I'm 25, right?
Right. And there's so much information.
So yeah, so much. So she has looked at my numbers, and of course, the physician was like, oh, I have the great cholesterol numbers or something, right? And she looked at it. I don't remember what the number was, but let's say like 120 or something. You know what I mean? Bad. And she's like, because your brain is deteriorating and you're depressed, right? I'm like, you're depressed. You're like, yeah, that's because your brain's falling apart. This is horrible, right? And so I had a new patient yesterday, and of course, coming for anxiety, depression, even like hallucinations, little potential schizoaffective psychotic. I'm not real sure exactly. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Let's see what's going on. And look at the numbers. This is an African-American woman here in the South, was probably 50 pounds overweight. Cholesterol 127, vitamin D 16.1, things like that, where you're like, hormones all depleted. I'm like, yeah. So like, let me explain to you what cholesterol does in the body. Let's explain to you that every cell in your body, short of red blood cells, makes its own cholesterol. Your liver spends half its day making cholesterol. Please, someone explain it. 50% of your membranes is cholesterol. 80% of your brain is cholesterol. Can please someone tell me how cholesterol became the devil?
Right.
I don't understand. Every cell makes it. If every cell's making it, I'm pretty sure it's not bad for you.
Right. I know. And now, I'm sorry.
Sorry, the problem is now, some of our patients, Dr. Brannon says the same thing that you say. Then they go to their regular doctor, they get their labs done, and their cholesterol is at 240, let's say, if they're a 50-year-old man, and immediately they want to throw them on statins because they scare the bejesus out of them. And so now the patient's kind of stuck in the middle. Like, well, do I, compromise and maybe reduce my cholesterol to 190, to keep Dr. Brannon happy and to keep my other doctor happy? So that's the problem, because you're going back and forth, and people unfortunately still aren't able to break away from the traditional doc to go someplace else. And I think from an acute standpoint, it's a team approach. You have your individual person. Okay, who's going to make sure I'm healthy? It's going to be Dr. Rimka. Okay, cool. I'm going to go over here, or Dr. Brannon. But man, if I, have something that, those two can't diagnose, then maybe I should go to an acute doctor at that point in time, because maybe in some cases I do need a drug. And I think, how do you combat that though as a doctor? I mean, it's just, it's kind of frustrating as a patient, because you are stuck in the middle sometimes.
It's pretty simple for me. I think it comes down to integrity. And so my job, quite frankly, I'm a mother as well. I could care less if my son is mad at me or likes me or something that day. It's called parenting. So doctoring means your feelings, if you like me or not today, and I'll say things like, look, you may never want to see me again, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to lie to patients. I'm not going to coddle them. I'm not going to keep wrapping them in their diapers so they can go off to their grave slowly. So I stand very strong. I'm confident in what I'm saying. I'm confident in what I know. I project that onto them. I teach them to trust themselves. I teach them to stand up to their physicians. I will not let them be bullied. I said, no, 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 no. Your gastroenterologist said what to you? I said, we're not having it. Not today. So you either, and then they usually go back and they fire them because you can find a new doctor. There are many, you know what? You don't like what they say? Fire them. It is that simple.
I think that's
I mean, I'm just saying, I think doctors need to man up a little bit. I'm not trying, if I'm worried about keeping a patient to earn money, then you should retire. That's just the truth of it. So I think at the end, you educate that patient. That happens all the time to me. They come in, okay, I got it. They said, what to you? Okay, let's have an education. You make your own decision. Let me educate you. Again, because I don't spend 7 minutes per patient, I can do that. I usually reference them to Perlmutter. I think his book, Grain Brain, is excellent. He breaks down the cholesterol stuff. There's so many resources, physicians. So they go, look, I'm the quack. You don't have to believe me. Look at these ones. They've come to the dark side, and they get it. As soon as you say, look, the kind of that magic number is 220 to prevent Alzheimer's. I don't want Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. They get it. I mean, they just need somebody to give them a little bit of encouragement and to say, I stand with you. I call principals, I call teachers, and I call doctors. I said, they said what to you? Give it to me. I have gone to town on the phone with principals almost to the point. So let me be real clear. You are not practicing medicine. If you ever tell that parent this again, that's how it is. I've actually sent a contract to one school. This kid was having such problems, a 7-year-old shaking in terror with so much anxiety to walk into school because of what they were doing in terms of the homework and the writing on the board. This girl is brilliant. It wasn't about that. I needed to have time to fix her brain, but she was being traumatized by the style of the school and all this ridiculous kind of homework that's not necessary. And I said, so here's the thing, I sent something to you. So I basically sent him like a disclosure of like, are you going to sign liability for her mental health until she's 18 by doing this? Or are we getting a break? She's under my care. There will be no more homework. There will be no more pop quizzes. The blah, I had a whole litany. And at first, because the mom was like, oh, it didn't work. So it didn't work. I'll call them. That's what doctors need to do. Doctor means teacher, not drug pusher, not problem, symptom solver. It means teacher. That's what the Latin word means. So my job is to teach them enough, to be empowered enough to stand up anywhere, to know how to stand up in an ER, to know how to stand up in this. You know what I mean? Then they can make an informed consent decision because they've been informed. So if they still want to go on the statin, I'm going to hug them and love them and they can do what they want to do, but they've had the information. Mm-hmm. And if I can help, making a fear-based decision, that's the worst place to make a decision from. The brain is not rational when it's anxious and afraid. That's not what we want to do. So if I can help soothe that, now come from a stronger place, make a decision then. They usually make better decisions, when they feel safe mm-hmm. and protected. And I'll do that for my patients.
I think that's the biggest thing is, I think growing up, you're like, oh, you go to the doctor and they'll tell you what to do. Absolutely. But as you get older and you've experienced more doctors or, other people's experiences, you have to remember, your body the best and you need to be the best advocate for yourself. And so, like you said, like fire a doctor, find the next one. And that's like, we're so big here. Like we'll, talk with patients and we don't just tell them what to do or, we'll say what we think, but then we give them education and articles and like, here's what we think, this is why, and now you go do your own research because that's what's key. So that they can take it with them, they can think about it, and like you said, then they can have that power to stand up to the next doctor, next principal, whoever they may be talking with.
Right. Yeah.
So since we have 15 minutes, let's talk about two fun topics that everybody likes to talk about these days. And you seem to be a very, it's refreshing, by the way, a very forceful personality. And thoughts on the vaccine with your patients. And then, of course, we could talk about COVID as well.
So we'll differentiate. Again, we're going to use words because words have meaning and they're powerful. So are we talking about actual vaccines? Or are we talking about the phase 3 clinical trial?
I'm sorry, the
experimental gene therapy. Okay, great.
Yes.
Latter.
So that experimental jab?
Yes.
The gene therapy, yes.
So, I mean, I think it's insanity. I'm terrified of it. I just, again, for me, it comes down to connection in nature and what it means to be human. I don't think you can get, I mean, you can, but this is a massive path to become non-human, to genetically modify your own genetic code and to have your body be able to manufacture an artificial protein, spike protein. That's insanely dangerous. At least with a traditional vaccine theory, it at least makes sense, whether I agree with it or not, right? You have an idea of, okay, there's this thing that causes an illness, let's kill it and have an attenuated version. We're going to try to stimulate the immune system to make antibodies so it'll have an artificial immunity. That doesn't sound like craziness. This other thing, I mean, I just don't understand. I mean, who actually goes into set up clinical trials to try drugs? People who are like desperate, whether they need money, they're homeless on the street, they're drug addicts, or they have a terminal illness. Under no circumstances as anybody I know would say, yeah, I would like $300 to be your lab rat for the next 2 months, drug company. None of us do that.
Yeah.
It's usually, people who are desperate and don't have quite inmates. They use prisoners, they use slaves, they go to Africa and India, they get the black and brown people. Let's just tell the truth. So it makes me very nervous. I'm really sad to see that people have been so terrorized that they won't question something that is technically still in a phase 3 clinical trial. I would never try anything. I don't buy a brand new car. Like, well, that's the first year. I'll wait because I'm sure something's going to break on it. I mean, I just don't understand it.
Especially something that COVID, it's, over 99% survivable.
Yeah.
And I feel like, but you, like what we were talking about before, our brain doesn't make rational decisions based on fear. And the amount of fear that they have put out for the past year, they knew, that's what's getting people. And it's hopefully
I say I don't understand. It's a trauma response.
Yeah.
People have been traumatized by it, and now they're just
making the death count on the news for a year with people sitting inside, like that's, it's very all into it. But I have a question. So at first I was worried that people who were getting the shot, they were going to shed, but it's not a normal vaccine, so they weren't going to shed. But now there's all these cases that people who are around people who got it are getting sick.
Mm-hmm. So none of us know. None of us are going to know, right? But here's a couple theories that I think I saw right away. So at the end of the day, I talked a little bit about what does it come down to? Nature. And nature is electromagnetic. We are electromagnetic beings. Our mitochondria are sending out signals and receiving signals. Mitochondria, that's why we've been able to adapt. If you know anything about mitochondrial health and genetic Doug Wallace's work and haplotypes, you understand they respond to light and temperature, just boom, 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 boom. That's why we have so many different colors and so many different things, because the mitochondria, how quickly they change. Our DNA doesn't change, the mitochondrial DNA. It's a non-human whole subset of DNA that's running the show for us.
Right.
We have a whole nother alien being inside of us called mitochondria, and they're running our energy show. They're creating all our metabolic water. They're keeping us hydrated, keeping us structured, and keeping us alive. So, you have that. They send and receive informations with the environment. This is not woo-woo. This is what, quantum biology, this is fact.
Right.
Okay. So there's resonance as well. So that's part of the electromagnetic frequency and resonance, a frequency that we're emitting. We also emit light frequency. We're emitting light. We're a light sound frequency emitting and receiving being. Giant antennas to the environment. We're constantly sending and receiving information. This is known. I use all of these in my practice. I use light, sound, PEMF, electromagnetic frequencies, electricity, transcranial stim, all of this stuff to help patients get better. So that system needs that. Well, it's sending out information. If you change the resonance of the human being, you become like a beacon to Wi-Fi telecommunicate. It's no different. So we like to say things like, well, it's pheromones. Like you could put 15 women together somewhere and we are going to sync up and our periods are going to be the same. Right. We change each other just by being around us. Mm-hmm. We know that. You walk into a room at a party or any room, and if that energy isn't right, you're like, whoa, there's something there. Frequency, you feel it. Your body picks it up and goes, something's not good here. Mm-hmm. Or like, wow, what is this frequency? And I love it. That's resonance. And it's like tuning forks, right? You get the right one and they start to make all the other ones go off. I think it's more that.
Yeah.
I think if you change your resonance, you don't have to be shedding things. It's just frequency.
Right.
But I don't know.
Right. Because again, it's a trial.
Yeah.
That they created. And like for Johnson & Johnson, they've never made a vaccine. And here it is, the trial now.
Yeah. I mean, Moderna's never successfully made anything until now, supposedly. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's all, I mean, there's that. I get people have a trauma response. I also go with, I'll say this, and I could tell Jim's like rolling his eyes inside himself. He's like, wow, this woman says some things. But here's the reality. I'm a mom. I had to hire a babysitter at one point, a nanny. I did background checks on her, right? I did background checks on everybody, and you kind of see. So I would never hire somebody that had been arrested and convicted 5 times of child molestation. And if I did, everybody would think I'm an irresponsible lunatic because I put my child at risk. Now, me hiring a 5-time convicted child molester to watch my son didn't mean they would molest him, but there's a really high probability that past behavior is going to predict future behavior. That's the best determiner in psychology of future behavior is past behavior. So every pharmaceutical firm making one of these injections is a convicted felon multiple times of lying, deceiving, and killing human beings with their drugs. I have yet to understand why anybody continues to trust them or believe anything they say, because they are repeated convicted felons of lying in their manufacturing and what their data shows and what their products do. I'm not sure why that isn't more well known, why that isn't being talked about, and why they're still doing business. Because we would never let a convicted child molester own a daycare center, right? Oh. I'm just saying, it seems like common sense to me, but yet we seem to have lost common sense.
And that's what's been mind-blowing of this whole experience.
Yeah.
But also it's very manufactured of what's going on right now.
Trauma does that though,
right?
And I do have deep compassion.
Right.
You hear me with a strong voice. This is heartbreaking. I'm watching people, their families being torn apart and people isolated and grandmothers not seeing their grandbabies for a year. It's horrible. I've watched my patient base be destroyed with their anxiety and PTSD and panic and things coming back. I have a tremendous amount of women that have been raped, and putting on that mask is absolute horror for them. My nephew is autistic. He can't wear that mask. He's been at home now for almost 2 years. We're all doing the best we can. I get it. I really do understand. And there comes a point though, I'm like, you can't keep choosing convenience and comfort. That's killing us.
Exactly.
Well, that's the problem too, because I think people are so frustrated. They're willing to go along, take the risk, get the vaccine just so they can have this vaccine passport, so they can go do things again, because every day they're being threatened that they're going to lose their liberty and freedom if they don't get the vaccine.
Yeah. Well, we have to teach them to rise up.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, if this is, I mean, I won't get into it too much. You do not need permission to live your life. You do not need permission to be a sovereign being. You do not need permission to control and govern what goes into your body, what air you breathe, and who you congregate with. I mean, can't speak for any other country. My grandfather he was Muslim, and he came from this country from, East Pakistan. He came here for a reason. He came here for freedom. He came here to guarantee, let his own daughter, you don't have to be Muslim, be what you want. You don't have to wear any of that stuff because you're American. So I'm freaking American and I have actual rights. I don't live in Dubai or Syria or some other places that I don't want to go. Right. So people need to remember that you do not need permission from your government or some agency to do anything. They need to stand up and take it back. That's what it comes down to.
Exactly.
If you were Dr. Fauci a year ago, what advice would you have given the general public on COVID?
So if I was Dr. Fauci, do I have to be him?
No, you can be, no.
You could be you, but
yeah. Well, a year ago, when we first heard, right, let's say I just had that information, the information I gave to my own mother and all my patients and everything, I didn't know. We didn't know. We heard it was coming out of Wuhan. It was very concerning. We focused on things to build the immune system, had a supplement bundle, including, a few peptides, vitamin C, zinc, melatonin. We had the whole bundle, the D3, K2. I was like, look, I had light bulb, everybody. So here's the thing too. I'm into ozone, a lot of oxygen, ozone therapy and light therapies. And the whole Trump statement, which was hilarious. And I had to like say to people, I'm like, that was like a thing. I get it done all the time. I have UV light put into my vein and ozonated blood. It's awesome. It's called MAHUBI. That's real. So I think those therapies, I would have told everybody to get a nebulizer and have hydrogen peroxide at home, colloidal silver, like kind of like I have a rectal ozone right in my house. I got all the gadgets. I already know all the things. This is what I teach my people. How can you be empowered at home to protect yourself? You don't need us, right? That's what you really need. If things go down, can you survive?
Right.
Do you have what you need? That's my son's super into survival prep, so I kind of got into it. So that's what I would start with. And I absolutely would have talked and I did videos on it. I talked about how quickly you could affect your immune system by lowering leptin. And the way you do that is by lowering insulin, which is by going low carb, having high cholesterol, high saturated fatty foods, getting rid of all the processed things, all the high glycemic. You can change that in 24 hours. It's dramatic what you can do to an immune system in a few days by changing what you eat to a nice primal human diet of grass-fed ketogenic fats and meats and cholesterols things, and by changing glucose, which changes the insulin, which lowers leptin. We want all those things nice and low and stable. I would have immediately gone into that. Obviously, fresh air, sunlight, move like a human, walk. If you like exercise, do it. You'd only exercise if you got enough sleep. Sleep is your main priority. Prior to, the basics of what a human being, what they should have been saying all along. But I don't think the goal was to keep people healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like we've been in the same office working together throughout this year.
That's usually how private practice works, right? Usually, right? You're in private practice. You guys have to be good at what you do. Otherwise, you'll go out of business.
So it was so interesting at the beginning of this when you said, if I'm bad, patients aren't coming. But insurance, people just Google, they take my insurance. So I'm like, that is so true. You're always going to have that revolving patient. But exactly, like, people don't want to come see us. They're not coming.
Exactly. And when they give you the money, the energy exchange, they're committed.
Exactly.
They're in it. Yeah. This isn't a $10 copay.
Mm-hmm.
This is, we're in this together. I'm giving you everything I got. You give me the energy, I'll give you the energy. Right. And they're committed. Like, you don't get, for a while I was getting patients that were sent to me from like a drug rehab. And I'm like, I'm not working with these kids.
Right.
I'm like, they're not committed. I'm not fighting. I'm not going to work harder than you for you to be healthy. That's going to destroy me.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not sustainable.
Right.
So where do you see the medicine treatment options going? I mean, earlier, I think I took it as you're optimistic that more and more doctors like you, for example, will, treat more and more patients over time. Do you see that happening in the next 10 years, 20 years, or, is this going to be a long, slow slog?
Well, I think we might need to maybe even change the terms. I mean, healthcare needs to become healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Medicine is the practice of treating with drugs and surgery and drugs. I mean, it's just it's using medicine and surgery. It has its place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I get in a car accident, I want the best, ortho and neurosurgeon on around. And the reality is the best physicians that I've seen, the ones that to me are actually good, neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, cardiothoracic surgeons, and some OBGYNs. I would say the majority of everybody else were like, I don't really know if they know anything, you guys. I mean, I'm sorry, but they don't seem to know much. I mean, God bless you guys for doing what you do, because I'll tell you right now, here in Atlanta, I don't know one endocrinologist I can refer to.
And so that is why we started adding thyroid treatments to our practice, because on our initial lab panel, it's the full thyroid panel, and so many people are being treated for thyroid issues and were on Synthroid, and one, weren't feeling better, two, never got that full lab panel. And so that's why it really started, because they weren't being treated and feeling better.
Yeah, it's critical. I mean, I get so many people misdiagnosed, and then I had a really, anxiety or depression or ADHD, and it's their thyroid. I'm like,
exactly.
You don't need a therapist. It's your thyroid.
Like you're finished at 20, so let's start there.
It's really that. And then it leads me into, you need the hormone immediately. I mean, this is a triage moment. Like, get it, right? We got to do it. Like, it's a cast or whatever. You need surgery. Get it done. Then we can say, so it's up to you. Like, we can talk, like, you can resolve this. You don't have to be on that for life. Hey, if you're on it for life, that's not the worst thing ever, you guys. Real hormone replacement this is a natural, endogenous thing. Like,
Right.
it's not the same. But if you really want to take it to the next level and change behaviors and get a good relationship with what you're eating and the light and your sleep and stress, you want to do that, and they can decide. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's what
So,
we always say that, like, hormones are key, right? It's like gasoline to a car, hormones to your body. But if you get your hormones treated, but you go eat McDonald's, you're not going to get the full benefit. You're not going to feel the best. You're not going to have the same, enjoyment of life. So it really is it's full circle. We really try to look at, the body as a whole. And like you said, being outside, going for a walk, working out, it's not a one thing.
it's not. And I know it's hard to teach them that because, everyone's so stressed out, overworked and in debt and slave to money and economics. I get it. So kind of like, how am I supposed to do that? What do you mean I'm supposed to like play and sleep early? And because we have a real problem with rest in this country and a real addiction to hustle and grind and that's the American mentality. Be a factory worker, basically. Don't think.
Right.
Because he asked earlier, Jim asked about that. Why you can't think? Because we're trained to be factory workers, not think. Even our physicians follow the protocol, do what it says. Here's the flow chart, and get it done. Not kind of daydreaming and thinking about it. Very non-Taoist. Taoists go into daydreaming first, and then the answer will come to you.
Right.
And we resist this so much. Like, we think it's reserved to geniuses like Tesla and Einstein, who all showed us it's in the flow of the nothing that answers just came to them all in one, and they just learned to write it down. So yeah, it's hard to teach some of them that, but a lot of times I think half my job is just teaching people that I give them permission to love and nurture themselves again,
which is huge.
Yeah.
I think Dr. like Will Cole always talks about it. Like, if you don't love yourself, you're never going to be able to fully heal. And that is so true.
Yeah, big time.
Well, Doctor, this has been a fascinating discussion today, and we thank you for joining us. Every time we end the podcast, we always ask our guests to provide 5 takeaways for the listeners. So I'm going to throw it back to you. And
5 takeaways, like 5 things that I think they should do. Like, what does that mean?
And like anything that comes to your mind, like to have like enjoy life, to whatever comes to your mind.
Okay. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the most powerful lessons I ever learned was to throw away my TV. I haven't owned a TV in 20 something years. Get rid of your TV. Stop. Know that nutrition. Number 2, nutrition is everything that goes into your system. It is not just what goes into your mouth. It's the music you listen to. It's the people you're around. It's the books you read. It's the shows you watch. You are absorbing everything. 3, to follow up with that, your mind hears everything. Everything you say to yourself, you're always listening. And be mindful of your words. Be mindful of how you describe yourself. Be mindful how often you say, I can't. Be mindful how you talk to yourself. In that vein, number 4, I would recommend everybody, if they haven't already done it, they find a picture of themselves when they were 3, 4, 5, something like that. A photo of themselves, kind of like their inner child that they really liked. Like, oh man, look how cute I was. Find that. Put him or her in a frame and start talking to her every day. It's going to say me. I have this in my bathroom, but I went through this. If you're struggling to love yourself or to have the health you want, there's going to be some unresolved emotions that are trapped in there. You start talking to yourself when you're a child every day, just briefly. And it could be, hi, honey, I love you. You're so cute. That's it. Have a good day. That's it. And you'll actually find sometimes that might be really hard to do. And if that starts coming up, you might have to talk to your doctor or therapist. Like, wow, I think I have a lot of stuff going on. 5, I think I'm on. I would say do everything you can to remember what it means to be human. And if that means studying some old text, things like the Weston A. Price Foundation, westonaprice.org, it's a great website that kind of gives you a foundation of what did indigenous primal human beings live like? What did we eat? How did we move? And in general, when it comes down to food, a proper human diet is a local, right to you. The sun is near you. It's not being shipped across time zones. It's grass-fed animals that are eating what they're supposed to do, not anything artificial, not living in cages, and eating cyclically with the seasons. If it isn't near you growing and you can't, and remember, you're fighting with other animals to get to it. You and your family would never be able to get a hold of 5 apples because those boars would have killed you. So go back to being human, make your diet animal based, and you want to add other things in there for fun, fine. Is that my 5?
I love it.
Yeah, they were probably the best 5 we've ever gotten. Question for you. Do you really go to bed when the sun sets? I mean, when it gets dark?
Not always, but I always use blue lights. My whole house has special lights and I have blue blockers. So I have red lights that convert. So I have no fluorescent or LED lights in my home. I control the light environment. I do use fire salt lamps for ambiance. So you can see red and orange light. We have adapted to fire, and the moon is not any blue light. It's yellow and red wavelengths as well. So that doesn't disrupt melatonin production the same way. So you need the full darkness immersion, and we're missing that because of light toxicity. So I use blue blocking glasses. I have filters on every screen will go red if I was going to watch something, red screens and blue blocking glasses. And I usually am using candles and fireplace and fire pits, things like that. But I'm asleep 9:30, 10 or something. So I'm up at 3:30 to 5, something like that.
Sure. And if you're going to give up the TV, how painful are the first few weeks?
Well, I did it and I was like 20 something. I don't remember. And I've had people do it and they shockingly say it's not that hard. I mean, and it might be, I'm saying you have to like get rid of it, either move it or put often if it's in the house, put a blanket over it. It does help to like hide it the same way you'd put like a towel over cupcakes on the counter, just put it away. Because just seeing it triggers a cortisol response and everything, right? You guys know, right? So you can put a sheet over it and that kind of thing. And it's really about, and for me with families with kids, it should be a no-brainer. No child should be seeing any screen, until they're probably at least, I want to say 12, but I'll maybe go to 9. It just gives you a chance to connect again, play games, bring out Monopoly, break out Candyland, whatever, play Scrabble or go outside, play catch. If you got to fill it in. I usually don't like to take away with diet. Let's say I never take things away before I add in, you just add things in. Okay. Can we eat more meat? Can we eat more? Like sometimes women are just starving. I'm like, oh man, you need to eat so much more food, just eat whatever you like, just eat more of it. Right. Before I start taking the things away, you want to fill them up with what's going to satiate them. So I don't know how hard it'll be for some people. The little phone devices and the Amazon and the shopping and the Tinder or the Instagram, that's probably harder now because the dopamine hits are just so rapid fire now. That's a little bit harder to do, but I have to replace it with something for them. So I work that out with them. I would say work out a way you can do it, Yeah.
Well, this has been a fascinating hour. We thank you for your time today. And for those that are interested, please Google, look her up, Brannon Body Solutions. What town are you in Atlanta?
I'm in Atlanta proper.
Okay. And just Google Atlanta and you'll come up, and love to have you on again down the road, and best of luck to you and your practice.
Thank you so much. It was really, really, really fun to be here. I hope I didn't bring too much, controverscy, but hey, maybe it.
Oh no, you are fitting right in. You okay. And Greg need to have a great conversation. So awesome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and you got Tyler talking a lot today, so that's always good also.
Good.
Yes.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks. Yep.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.